everybody's like, how you show up says everything.
Yeah.
I also think we need to incorporate how you leave says more. All right, welcome back to the Pure Athlete Podcast. I'm Dr. Dustin Boston with the athletic trainer herself, Erin Ruggieri. Super excited to continue to deep dive and bring more information, education, of the ability to ask better questions on all kinds of topics for student athletes and their parents trying to keep up and navigate this crazy world we're in as far as athletics, especially for the younger generation. So just bridging the gap, as we say every single time, based around three major pillars of the pure athlete: mental, physical, relationships. And I almost stuttered there. I didn't know which one I wanted to put first. I go back and forth between physical and mental and relationships. I do them in a different order.
I think it sounds better with mental, physical,
in no order in particular and not limited to. But super excited to go on this one. We are on the heels of the Super Bowl and just a lot of great things going on as we transition into more seasons. Just a lot of excitement coming into spring. It seems like, at least in our area, we're looking for an early spring. We have more nationals coming up for different sports, including dance. We have baseball starting. So just a lot of good things. But I'm excited to kind of jump in and go through our deep dive today. And you want to go anywhere with this before we jump into our deep dive?
No.
Anything to report?
No.
From AT Erin?
No, it's a really exciting time for athletics, like you said, at high schools around the area. This is kind of the time where people are doing multiple sports. They're finishing one. When their season ends there, they're going right to the next. So it's a really hot time.
Well, I will say our following is growing, which is super good. We appreciate you guys, for those of you that have subscribed to the podcast and those that are about to subscribe to the podcast, but also the people who have followed our page and started interacting. We have a great giveaway that's going on in February. So wherever you are at, you can log in. You can help us kind of create a push as far as awareness on what we're doing here. We're giving away a bunch of Yeti stuff, a Yeti camping chair.
Yeah.
There's a couple different versions. This is the one that will work great in a campground. It's got 4 legs, super sturdy. I haven't sit in it yet. I'm afraid to. I don't own one of these yet. Well, I own that one until I give it away. Yeah. But I'm afraid to use it.
Yeah. You know what else would look good on? A sideline.
Yeah. So we're calling it our ultimate sideline giveaway.
It's giving sideline.
Great segue there, Erin. I appreciate that. Yeah, so our ultimate sideline giveaway, we've got a couple different options to win on that. So we can plug in the links for that. You can join us and join among the hundreds of other people who have actually applied to win as well. You can gather tickets depending on what you do. So follow us on social media.
Yeah, and click the link in the bio for that one.
Yep, click the link in the bio. We'll make it super easy for you guys to follow all the things, including our personal pages. Yeah. We're not untouchable. We want you to see what we're doing as we upload a lot of content in our daily lives, seeing a lot of the athletes. So without further ado, let's go.
Let's go. Where do you want to start?
Kick it off.
Well, I'm back from nationals.
Yep.
This is really my first one back. Tricked you guys.
When are you leaving again? When sooner than later?
No, not until like April, but it'll only be a weekend to watch the alums
set the date.
Dance. But yeah, I just got back from UDA High School, which is kind of my Super Bowl. People say that college is Super Bowl, and then this is like the mini playoff game. But yeah, back from that, and lots of experiences there that I can't wait to talk about.
Yeah. So with that being said, coming back from high situations or high pressure situations, bouncing back, if you will, or transitioning out of a high pressure situation, good, bad, or indifferent, is really something that we wanted to talk about today. And we will jump through and lay a foundation, a little bit of a framework, and maybe just perspective more than anything as we start this conversation, because it is a huge transition if done correctly.
Yeah.
And depending on how intense or how focused we are, what was the goal for that season. I think everybody's transition looks different depending on team makeup, sport, what they're actually, what were their goals for the season? What did success look like for the season? It might not have been winning a championship, but can you reflect and did you achieve those? So depending on where teams or even individuals for golfers or soloists or tennis players, depending on if they're solo sports, did they meet their goals? What were they? Evaluating that, I think, has a huge impact on how you transition from high pressure situations, because as later in the season goes, did you make the playoffs? Yes or no? If yes, where did you fall as far as the championship is concerned? And then you can transition from there. But depending on where it is, it looks a little different for everybody.
Yeah, and I think this whole concept is kind of hard to teach. It's kind of something that you have to experience to then know how you're going to react to it. And that's kind of where my team at Nationals, so we competed our first dance, which was jazz. That's the slower one for all of you listening. We competed that first, and then you find out if you make the next round. They do it based on, they give you a prelims performance that everyone does, and then for the JV category, they lump everyone together. So for those of you who don't know, at a lot of these big competitions, you're broken up in between your team size. So they're small, medium, and large. In the JV, they really just put you all together and say minimum is 5 people and there's not a maximum. So some of these performing arts schools, the bigger schools, which that's the dream, have teams of JV who are 25 plus. And my team is 10 people. So when you're talking about dance, it's hard to compare 10 people to 25. You can cover more area on the stage. There's just more to hide. Also, my team of 10 can't hide anything, which is why we have to be so hard on them. So we competed jazz first, and they announced finalists before we were competing our other two, which were game day and hip hop. Our jazz was the best they've ever done this whole season. They've never gotten really any negative critique on it. So in their brain and also ours, I'm okay, this is going to be not a walk in the park, but we're not going to not make finals. We've had a great year. We went to other regionals and they loved it. No negative comments on that. And then we didn't make finals. Which in the moment, they're distraught. Obviously you would be, you've worked. Dance is crazy because you work years and years for 2 minutes. And
this is a whole different kind of bouncing back.
And so yes, they needed to have a second, and we brought them in together and we're listen, you're allowed to be a human and be upset. Why do you think my sunglasses are on right now? I'm obviously upset as well. However, we still have unfinished business in the other 2 dances. And we actually put them to bed for a little bit and we were okay, you're gonna go to sleep, wake up, it's gonna be a new day, and we'll start over with these other 2. But it's really cool. I'm getting chills thinking about it again. We put them to bed, we leave them, we come back an hour and a half later, thinking that we're gonna gently wake them up. No, we walk up and they fake are sleeping. They're giggling asleep, and we're what are you guys doing? And they just get up and they start screaming. They were we're ready to go. And I'm whoa, we're in public, relax. But so they said that they rallied. They were you know what? We wouldn't have changed a thing. We've been trained for this our whole lives. And especially this year, we've been trained to do whatever comes to us. And they rallied from there.
It's in that realm. And again, we talk about dance a lot because it's real for us, but it translates to a lot of different sports. But what's unique about dance is you've got a 4-day deal where you have the first 3 days where you dance all 3 depending what categories you're in. And to lead off and find out you're not in the weekend. I mean, bouncing back from something like that alone is not ideal to lead off the weekend.
Right.
But how, you guys responded and having all of those schools lumped together, it's very easy for those girls to fold. And this is why we do talk about the emotional side a lot. And it's okay to be upset and sit in that for a second. It's not okay to use it as a crutch, dwell, play victim. However, I do think part of bouncing back is allowing yourself to sit and reflect in the moment, good, bad, or indifferent. Because if you win the championship and you move, okay, off season, gotta go. And it's if you don't allow yourself the moment to sit and figure out what just happened and what went right, good, better, best. And you just move to the next thing, you fall into a trap of, it could never be good enough.
Right.
And you don't respect where you were at. Therefore, God in his universe might not give you the
Yeah.
opportunity to enjoy it again.
Yeah.
But also you can take away the ability to learn a lot of great things that you had done
Yeah.
to get to that point. And you also lack the learning of what could have been better. I
Right.
mean, there's always, it's not about being necessary. Everyone's like better every time, better every game, better every game. It's like, well, I think there's a lot of consistency in that.
Yeah.
And so getting better could be a little bit of a misnomer, but there's always things I do think you can work on. And maybe it doesn't need to be better. It just needs to continue to be consistent.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that has sat with me over the past few weeks as we've talked to more student athletes, as we're starting more student athletes and their parents, and seeing more coaches now and collaborating with particular people that also see student athletes. We're just having such great conversations, and it hit me with, what if they're the best? What if they're already there?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not that they played worse, it's just that they didn't keep the consistency of best up.
Right.
So that's a conversation to have there, but to bounce back from a low level, it was exciting to see how your girls did respond, because obviously they're close to us. We know them.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of teams that do that as well. And encouraging from a coaching perspective and that leadership perspective. What did you learn from the leadership perspective, knowing that you got your ass kicked day one, right, wrong, or indifferent? Who cares? Maybe they didn't like the dance. Again, those could all be crutches and excuses.
Yeah.
What I don't like to do in those situations, just speaking on that real quick, as I'm taking back my time, is I don't allow the crutch and excuses, because those are all subjective things that you cannot control.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't like the dance, or they've seen it before. It's like, no. And leading from a perspective of, look, there are no crutches, no excuses. Sit in this, be upset. What do you want to hear? However, we're not going to say they don't like us, they're from a different area, their kids go to this school. Like, no.
Right.
Like, we've got to put that to the side and objectively think, sometimes in this scenario, they're just not going to like it.
Yep.
You're not playing by strokes. You're not putting, basketballs in a hoop to gain points. It's all subjective. So what did you learn with all of the success you've had this year? And how did that translate to the girls?
Yeah, I think, so like first it happening, like my first instinct was like, oh, like this sucks. But then I like very quickly flipped it, because I've been on college teams that didn't react that way.
Yeah.
I've been on college teams who they heard we were in second and they're like, well, this is just stupid. Like, and they don't work for it. But in that moment, like, you have two whole other opportunities to get whatever you want. And like, yes, did we want to make finals in Jazz? Correct. But there's also like so much other great things that happen throughout the season. Like, they've never won Chicagoland before. And so just because at Nationals, maybe something doesn't go your way, that doesn't define your whole season.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part in a sport like dance, or really any sport. Like the big game, the cup game, the natty game doesn't define years of work and relationships that you built and like just everything together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, and that's probably one of my favorite things to do, and why I am so passionate on the mental side, for the extreme reasons, but for the overcoming. Like, I don't mind being the underdog, but I love being in the scenarios of, let's just make this real and tangible real quick.
Yeah.
And let me divert your thought process of, you look at, the Chiefs Super Bowl and all this stuff around Brock Purdy right now, and, does this qualify him as a great quarterback or a true QB1, or, and to lose the Super Bowl. And it's like, well, hang on a second, and not to say he's having any sort of, but you could definitely see how a player like that in a similar scenario from high school to, professionals could really start to question and allow the loss of the game to define not only their career, like, people around you are going to define your career.
Yeah.
Your statistics are what are ultimately going to decide where you fall among greatness. The only way you can control that is the effort, the consistency, and the diligence and the respect that you put into the game or the craft that you have.
Right.
So all that other stuff is still subjective. So other people are going to define it for you. And that's really not for them to choose either. So just forget about it. But just because you lost a game, like, it's the best against the best of that season. And you look at the past 5 seasons, you're playing against a dynasty. And yes, you've lost to him twice, but that doesn't define who he is.
Right.
no touchdowns or no interceptions, couple touchdowns, led the team. Like, it's not a Brock Purdy problem.
Yeah.
It's not a San Francisco problem. You got beat. And guess what? You get to wake up again. And if you choose to, do it again tomorrow and not be better, but be consistent. And if there's something you need to get better on, you have that opportunity. Respect the game, respect the craft, respect the process and opportunity, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah.
And if there's a decision that you have to make, then make it. If you want to be traded, if you want to, take a different position, if you want to, work out differently, depending on what it is, that's a decision that only you can make. And the most stress and the most discomfort, I think, what I've learned, even in my whole scenarios the past couple of years, is more of that stress and more of that almost victimhood leaking in is from lack of decision making and reflection.
Yeah, and it's also, I think a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this, you want success so that you can prove people wrong or show them that you're in a better place, or like their reputation. But your reputation is not based on your wins and your losses, your successes. It's really just based on the kind of person, because at the end of the day, like, get rid of all of the wins and the loses, all of the things, like, who is going to be there for you? Not the W's and the L's. Yeah. It's going to be the people that you surrounded yourself with who aren't basing your reputation off of those things either. So, I mean, I love Brock Purdy because of his story, like his reputation. He was Mr. Irrelevant. But
I don't know how you can be Mr. Irrelevant. You're drafted to a professional team.
Exactly.
Well, he got drafted last. Who gives a shit? He made it.
Yes, there's so many people who don't make it to that next level. So he's named as Mr. Irrelevant, but like, he's not irrelevant. And I think there comes a time where people are maybe snipping at you all season of like, you're irrelevant, like blah, 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 that you do start to say something like he said to Cam Newton. He's like, listen, like, you're not on the team. Like, you're not on a team. I might be 10th best on my team, but you're not even on one. And
what do you say? There's 90 other quarterbacks on NFL rosters, and he's not one of them. Like, a lot of people would look at that, like you said, reputation, relationship wise. They, some people are going to raise their eyebrow at that comment. I love it. Yeah. It was nothing derogatory. No. It was straight facts. It was a little bit of a jab, him standing up for himself. And it's like, look, bro, like, and Cam Newton might have a place on somebody's roster, was and still a great athlete and specimen in his own right. A lot of lip service there. But, yeah, good for him for standing up for himself.
Yeah, because at some point you have to stand up for yourself to those people who are basing your reputation off of those things. It's not fair, and it's not worth it to waste your mind space on it.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, and it's something that I love to talk about when bouncing back from high-pressure situations or going into the next season. It's like, okay, what if it's a rematch? Yeah. If you're going at anything out of spite, vengeance, there's another word I'm looking for, or, proof to prove them wrong, or if you're doing it out of any other thing other than competition, like, we're going to prepare. We're going to prepare 120%, and we are going to be ready. And I hate saying as ready as we can be. Well, that means you left something on the table. Yeah. It's like, no. We're going to be ready, and you do everything you can. If you're doing it for another reason other than competition, you're already down. You're already losing because you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. Like, fire yourself up, let it sit there and fester, but don't use it as an excuse. Like, we're going to prove everybody else. How about you just play for your team, play for yourself, play for the organization, the city, and focus on that and represent very well versus like, oh, we're going to prove them wrong. They've already got you. Yeah. Society, entertainment, it's like, oh man, they're rattled. And you could say that about Kelsey's situation with Andy Reid. It's like, it's a big topic right now, but they also you had no context. It's like, Travis Kelce is a high intense person. Reminds what makes me a little bit of myself when you get into those scenarios. Like, I wrongfully so, I'd always said I hate losing more than I like winning. Yeah, not the right attitude quite to have, but I don't think anybody knows exactly what was said, nor were they shown what happened afterwards. It's like, I would want somebody on my team that says, give me the ball, like, whatever we have to do to free me up. Like, he knows the scenario. It's not that he wasn't being passed to. It wasn't a selfish play. Was it intense? Hell yeah, it was very intense. Maybe could it have been handled differently? Not according to Travis Kelce's stature and where he sits on that team and the relationship that him and Andy Reid have. But you have that intense situation. It's like, being in that situation before myself, It's like sometimes you don't understand who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just coming off the field, you know it's your coach, but you kind of go dark, and it's like,
Yeah.
look, we need to. I need the ball in my hands
Right.
somehow, some way. Let's figure it out.
Right.
Like I just want to help. It's not that I need to show everybody up. It's like I need to help. We need to free me up and get some momentum going. I truly believe that's where he was coming at it from. It looked bad, but then he comes back and says, "Look, coach, like I'm ready. Pat on the ass, give him a hug." Like, but they chose not to show that.
Right.
But I truly believe if you're going to do that, just come at it from the right reasons. Like, oh, I can do better. I need to be showing out for these guys, and if they're not going to catch the ball, I can. No, and I don't think that was the context of it.
Yeah.
It's like, how can I help here? Like, we need to do something different now. And I'm ready.
Yeah, that also comes with knowing your athletes too. Like I bet that wasn't the first time that Travis has talked to him like that, because that is his nature in a high pressure situation. And like you have to know that certain people on your team are not gonna like really vibe with the getting hype and like whatever, and they need like the calm, slowly warm up. Like it depends on who they are as a person, and you have to know that as a coach and how to respond to that, how to lead through that. And obviously Andy Reid knows how to lead Kelsey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Provoke the Yeti.
Yeah. You also just never know. I mean, you have these people who want more for their team and whatever, but you also never know when something's going to happen. Like Greenlaw.
Yeah.
We're all of a sudden, watching the Super Bowl together and we're like, oh, that's an Achilles.
Yeah.
It's just like you just never know. And again, like, is his reputation built off of because he got hurt in the Super Bowl, not even playing? Like, no, his reputation is not just those 5 seconds that took for that to happen.
Right. And it's it also doesn't mean his career is over.
Right.
And bouncing back from this is no small feat or task. But to see things like that is a very high pressure situation that he's going to have to overcome now. And that's what it's all about. So, I mean, for those of you parents and student athletes, when it comes to the high pressure situations, I always like to go back and kind of empty the brain space and sit for a second and be like, where am I at? Who am I playing for? What am I doing? How should I show up? Everybody's like, how you show up says everything.
Yeah.
I also think we need to incorporate how you leave says more. Showing up is one thing. It's like, okay, well, once the game starts, we'll see who really is here and how they really respond. So it's not just showing up. Make sure that you or your student athlete or whatever dynamic you have, make sure you show up right, but also make sure you carry yourself through and leave correctly as well.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because like my favorite thing to do at Nationals is watch awards and how people respond to places. And I mean, obviously it's great to watch people win. It's great, but I always look at who got second because I've done this since I was in college. I tell my girls this. I'm like, if it comes down to you and someone else, like you better tell them good luck before you start holding hands again. And you better not celebrate until they get their time to celebrate. But then you also have the other turn of the coin that like, it's just so obvious that people aren't proud of themselves. They get the top 10, top 15. Like, it doesn't matter. You're at a national competition and you cannot be upset because of a placement that you got in one weekend.
Yeah.
It's just not fair to yourself. Dance team is not your end game. It's teaching you other things that we can do a whole nother podcast about what it teaches you, but it's not just because of that. And coaches have to be like, nope, snap out of it. And I just love watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And really the highest pressure situations that student athletes, and I think a lot of former athletes will agree with this too, the highest pressure situations you will ever have in your life are not underneath the scoreboard.
Yeah.
They're not. They're just not. It can prepare you for a lot of them and give you so many different perspectives and angles and relationships and so much experience in similar situations.
Yeah.
But high pressure situations on the field or on a court or in competition like this, it's like wait till you have kids.
Yeah.
Wait till your wife's in labor. Wait until, you're trying to, go D1 and you realize you have a 2.2 GPA
Right.
and you've got to pick it up, or there's certain things you have to do. It's like sometimes getting there is higher pressure than being there. Staying there is a whole nother level. And then how you exit and what the future looks like.
Yeah.
Like there is so much more pressure and so coming from that perspective for the student athlete side is how you manage through your academic career to be able to play sports is probably going to be more pressure than when you make it.
Yep.
Because everything you're doing now decides and predicates the success you're going to have or even the ability to take it to the next level. And it's based on three things. This is why they're the pillars: the physical aspect, the mental aspect, and the relational aspect. And so really respect that process and just understand if you have to bounce back from a negative connotation, you lost and you've got to bounce back, just know that there's so many things you can draw on to do that. Take the emotion out of it. But from a student athlete perspective, in order to be put in that situation, there's a whole lot of respect and work that you have to do now.
Yeah, and we say it all the time, but everyone's watching how you deal with any of these scenarios we brought up. People are looking at how you react to getting 10th, to first, second, tearing your Achilles, everything, walking in with your team. Are you talking to your team, or are you just like the cool guy who can't be seen with them? People are watching everything, and especially at these big games that we're talking about, if you're wanting to go to the next level, there's going to be people there who are watching for those very things. At dance nationals, there's always college dancers there, college coaches there, just seeing. And that's what I would do too. If I was a recruiter, I would literally sit at awards and be like, all right, show me how you're going to react. Just because that's the true expression of how they're going to be when they're under you.
Yeah. I mean, everything at that point, like here's really the cheat code, because this is not the
cheat code.
This is not the normal mindset, I don't think, yet on how to manage these scenarios and situations.
Yeah.
So here's what people are going to do. Here's the cheat code. Especially in high pressure situations or in competition in general.
Yeah.
Right. People are going to press your buttons.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they know how to do. Why? If they're pressing your buttons, they're insecure about the ability that you and or your team have to put them under.
Right.
Period.
Right.
They're masking some sort of insecurity on their own regard, or they're just not great competitors. So that doesn't matter either.
Got to make up for it somewhere.
Right. So it's like, so just know that how you respond, like they're going to press your buttons. And I would do that too as a coach, even with our World Series team, and I'd always end it with a huge joke at the end, be like, dude, I'm just messing with you. I was like, I am cramming these balls through the hole, trying to get you to dive, trying to get you to take all of this, practice right now, very, very seriously at a level that's very, very high that I know is going to make you upset, because that's what it's going to take. Yeah. And just like, back to a Kobe quote, it's like, practice is the hardest thing you should ever do. Navigating those relationships and realizing what that really looks like is some of the hardest things you'll ever have to control within yourself. So the more you do it, the more we as leadership can press their buttons, but teach them, like, look, if they're pressing your buttons, let them. They're spending a high percentage of their energy focusing on that. Right. Versus the route that you're about to run, and they missed who was in the slot, they missed the pulling guard, they missed, whatever it is, and that's when you take over. That's when none of that other shit matters.
Yeah, perfect. Let's jump to our favorite segment. Producer Sam.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Sam's favorite segment.
Sam's favorite segment. It's my favorite. You guys get to hear me talk, but you'll never see my face. That's how we like it here. As these two said earlier, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. God bless. Thank God.
Come on, Sam. We know you're in love with the Chiefs.
I am. I'm trying to rein it in. Not everyone is a Chiefs fan, which I'm sorry for you. But they're the first team to win back-to-back Super Bowls since the 2004 and 2005 Patriots, which is really cool. But they were, like Erin said, we all watched the Super Bowl together, which was so fun. Tradition. It's happening again next year. Can't wait.
For Aaron Rodgers' comeback.
Yes. Jets, Jets. Perfect. But there were so many things that happened in this game that we were all watching and we were all chatting about as they were happening. You already touched on, obviously, Travis yelling at Andy Reid. But like Dustin said, they didn't show what happened afterwards.
Yeah.
So we already covered that. But L'Jarius Sneed was very, very emotional from the get that game. Just.
I said it on the first drive.
He sure did. And then after Travis caught the ball before they went into overtime, Rashee Rice was open. And there was a clip of Rashee going to Patrick Mahomes and getting in his face being like, I was open. Like, I could have won this game. Like, and obviously, like, they had that back and forth. But also, Mecole Hardman, who won us the Super Bowl, who caught that game-winning touchdown, told commentators after the game that he just blacked out until he saw Patrick running towards him. And so I just want to take a couple minutes to touch on some of these things because we've talked about that championship mindset basically the entire time we've had this podcast. It's been at the forefront of our minds for a while. And did the Chiefs really have that mindset, or did it just happen in overtime? Did they have it that whole game? Did they have it just in overtime? And was this a case of passion versus sportsmanship?
Yeah, this is going to be a hot take for me, but I think based on the way that Hardman reacted to, making history, he was the most prepared out of all of them. He wasn't thinking about what he was doing. He was just doing what he's practiced, which is catching balls.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, him having a genuine, like, blackout, I was just playing ball kind of reaction, like, that's because he wasn't trying to ball out. He was doing what he knows how to do, what he's been coached to do. Yeah.
That's such a great perspective to have, for sure. And I'm glad you put it that way. I didn't know which way you were going to go with that, but hearing that, I mean, it is so true because I think in my initial was more questioning, like, what do you mean you blacked out? Like, did you not know where you were? Like, what are we talking about here? But at the same time, I mean, that does make a lot of sense. And thinking about it that way, it's like, how cool, calm, collected, just undistracted, and not emotional.
Right.
Like, you just won the Super Bowl, and a part of you knows that, and to just be for a second, like, yeah, that's huge. I'd love to chat with Sneed and see what he has to say. I'd have parked him very, very quickly because he did it. I saw him swipe at a ball, one of the first tackles he made on the first drive.
Yeah.
And swiping at a ball, like, give some lip service. Like, no, not here, man. Not you ain't running off the edge like that. Like, give him some lip service. You're not swiping the ball well after. Like, I thought he was getting a personal foul right off the get, and then he goes and slaps a guy in the helmet a drive or two after that, and I'm like, okay, so clearly you don't respect the situation you're in.
Right.
Like, you are not the show, and you're going to cost your team 30, 45 yards here real quick. I just don't, boldly, I just don't have much tolerance for that. And so it's like, hit the guy, help him up, don't help him up, that's fine. But yeah, like, again, he's pressing your buttons for a reason, and I don't know what was said on the field. Maybe that guy said something, but we just talked about that. They're there to press your buttons because you are the champions. On paper, no, you're not supposed to win that game.
Right.
But you are the champions, and anybody who knows, I'll take experience over a line sheet any day.
Yep.
I don't care what Vegas says, and it's like, and that came true. So it's like, just play the damn game.
Yeah.
Relax and just play the game. So, and then, Rashee coming at Pat, and it's like, well, hang on a second. Again, not knowing all of the connotations, the story, what was actually said. Like, you send the 49ers defense at me.
Right.
Here, you stand back there and find all your receivers, go through your circuit and your check downs and see if you can make it happen.
Right.
Because there's most oftentimes there's always somebody open that you miss. Sometimes there's not, but most often there's always somebody open that you just can't see. And so, I mean, but I get it. It is high stakes, and I'd rather him say something in that emotional moment, no different than Travis. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, if we're getting into a shoving match and we're pointing fingers and we're getting like super, super heated,
right?
Yeah, but what's he do? He ends up making plays throughout the game as well, and it all works out. But on the championship mindset too I don't think, as we've talked about this more, and we have talked about like a championship mindset, I think it's a collaboration given the situation and the dynamic. I don't think there is not one bullet point that says this is the championship mindset.
Right.
This is, if you do this, you will be a champion.
I wish.
just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I would say, I believe the strategy throughout the game, the first 10, 15 plays called are called for a reason.
Yeah.
It didn't look good at the beginning, really from either side of the ball, but less from the Chiefs. It's like, oh man, maybe this is the one they lose. But I firmly believe, given the scenario, the championship mindset was, look, here's what we're going after. Here's our strategy. And it might not have been, we're going to jump up 14-0 no matter the cost.
Right.
Because what if everything they did in the first quarter and those first 2 drives set them up for the success they had, and they just stuck to their plan, what they practiced, what they talked about, their reads and everything. And no different than any competition. You know, you talk about dance nationals or college World Series or, you know, the MLB World Series. It's like there's still, why didn't they throw their number 1 pitcher? Because there's a 5-game series here and we're setting up the first game. Like there's a whole strategy to that. So everybody wants to talk and provoke and, you know, have an opinion. That's why I don't talk too much about, I don't think Andy Reid should have called that there. I don't think Patrick should have thrown that pass. I don't think he should have audibled out of that play. It's like, no, it's just, I like to look at the whole vision and be aware. That was a big thing on last week's podcast, was awareness and vision. I learned on last week's podcast with Dr. Chelsea was cool because it can be very synonymous, but to see where you're at in the game, who's on the field, who's the personnel, what's at stake. There's just so much, and having that awareness and vision to execute just looks a little different depending on the scenario.
Yeah, and I think the championship mindset is, we've talked about this with leadership too, but it's not really a mindset you can turn off and on. It has to be something that you kind of live out through everything you do. And it's not just a championship. It's just kind of like a winning mindset. Are you winning at your job? Are you winning in your relationship? Are you winning in life? Like, it doesn't have to just to do with...
Again, consistency.
It doesn't have to just do with, the lights are on, let me turn it on, let me be a champion for a second.
I'm going to give an extra 10% today.
Yeah, that's not, because one, you don't train that way. So you're not going to perform that way. And then you're going to cost your team because you're making silly mistakes because you're not used to doing things like that.
100%. Wow. You want to provoke us some more, producer Sam?
What you got? I do, actually. Speaking of turning things on and off, obviously there are leaders both offensively and defensively on the sideline for both of these teams. How do those players keep the positive momentum going, whether you're down, whether you're making mistakes, whether you're winning and you're still making mistakes? Like, how on the sidelines do you maneuver keeping a positive momentum instead of allowing the harshness or the negativity or the mistakes to really get to you during a time like that? Yeah,
I think number 1 is you put your own feelings aside. You think about the greaterment of the team. Number 2 is you don't let anyone slack. You have to be the one to look at them and be like, you need to fix it. You need to fix it. You need to pick it up. And if your teammates don't respect that, then they don't respect you as a leader, because that's how you should do it.
I think the best leaders, this is why Erin and I need to coach something. I don't know. Maybe you can help me coach hockey with the boys.
You can help me coach dance. You're learning better now.
Well, here's the dynamic. And I would love to, like I've always said, like, hey, need pep talk? Like I feel so. But her saying that, it's like you can't let anybody slack. Like, you have an overarching plan and goal for leadership and what it is supposed to look like, which is cool. I think along with that, the best leaders, you look at a Kobe, you look at a Jordan, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, like you look at some of the best leaders that have played and been very successful. They relationally know who they're looking at on the bench or who they're talking to on the sideline when they're going about that. So to answer Sam's question, it's like, how do you do that? You have this overarching goal of, look, nobody's going to slack.
Right.
Here's the scenario we're in. I need to do something. And if it's like, you know, if I've got Pat and Travis and Rasheed and all these guys or whatever team you're on, it's like, I know what they need to hear and how they need to hear it to get the positivity, to make sure there are no more mistakes or to keep the momentum rolling. I think the best leaders in the world, in life, on a team is, how does each person need to be spoken to? If I'm going to come into a huddle, I'm going to have a blanket statement, argument, empowerment, and I'm going to draw it out of each person. Boom, boom, boom. I think that's really what it takes. Instead of just the rah-rah, I think Ray Lewis was probably very good at this too. Maybe a little bit edgy on that conversation. Take it for what you want. He was still a very inspiring leader for the Ravens when he played, and he had that ability to overarch and get the crowd going.
Yeah.
But he can narrow in on his teammates and be like, boom, 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 and give them tangible steps to keep their momentum going.
Yeah.
And if you can help somebody keep their momentum going and have them be like, I used to tell our boys, like, now be contagious. And they're like, what? I was like, take the shit you just did very well and that we just re-inspired you with and tell somebody else they did good.
Right.
Or pick somebody else up off the ground and inspire them too. Be contagious. I think that's really what it takes when it comes to sideline.
Yeah, and you also don't have to change who you are in like an everyday sense. I think that's something that I try to tell like captains now is you don't have to change your way of living just to be a captain that you see fit. Like you explaining that's like very much how you interact with people. And like me being like, cut the shit, that's very much how I interact with people. And so like you are a great leader because of your already characteristics. You don't have to fit a mold either.
And here's what I'll wrap up on that conversation too with what you just said is how you lead because of how your team knows you and how you have led consistently through.
Yeah.
When you do say, we're not cutting the shit here. Like they're like, ooh, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Like I know where we're headed here. And that's a trigger for them that only increases respect, not resentment.
Yeah.
If you have more teammates or players under you or coaching staff, if you start to recognize, whether you like it or not, resentment as a response versus respect and a change of tide, you got to look in the mirror a little bit, ask for feedback, reflect, because there's two different ways. Because you can't, in an intense situation where it's like, no, that is not how we're doing this. And they're like, who does she think she is?
Right.
Really different response instead of, all right, ladies, we got to go.
Yeah.
So pay attention from a coaching or parent aspect. That can be a parent aspect too. It's like, right, really? Like if you get any sort of lip service back as a parent, it's like, okay, reflect a little bit because you parents get heated too. It's like, and people want to talk about Kelsey or Rasheed or, some of those scenarios where you have intense situations with a coach. All you freaking parents on the sideline with referees and talking bad about the coach, it's like, no.
Yeah.
Now you want to talk, about Travis Kelsey and how he interacted. Like, you guys are 10 times, I don't want to say worse. It's not necessarily worse. I understand it. You guys are 10 times more intense than that.
Yeah.
So first of all, chill back on that, but also reflect and be like, okay, how did they respond? Was it warranted? And if it wasn't, then call their shit.
Right.
If not, be like, okay, so let me rephrase that, because they should still respect you enough as a parent to listen. And they might just sit over there and be like, all right, I can't wait till we get home. But continue to talk to them, not at them, and say, okay, let me rephrase that. Sorry I said it that way. But if you get resentment as a response, beware and see if you can shift it.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one more thing. We talked about being prepared. It was said after the game that the 49ers didn't know the overtime rule until they saw it on the Jumbotron. I knew this was coming. And that Chris Jones said we practiced overtime procedure every day. Every day we had a plan. Like, what's your thoughts? Did Kyle Shanahan not tell them? Did they know? Like, what? How as a coach do you not prepare your team for a situation like that?
And how true is the statement that you're reporting actually?
Right.
Because I haven't seen any interviews with Shanahan. I don't know if he's said that, accepted that.
It was Kyle Juszczyk at the end of, in the post interview was Juszczyk and Chris Jones were the two. Because
who's to say they didn't do that? I'd hate for it to be an excuse and I don't think that would happen to where it's like, well, I'm just going to throw this out there.
Yeah,
it's like, we have all these injuries and it becomes an excuse. I don't know if that's the case. I would say if Shanahan, the head coach, were to say, or one of their offensive coordinators were to say, like, oh, that's da-da-da-da-da, it's like they could also be taking the blame onto them, which I would say is the first thing. It's like, oh, he's a terrible coach. He didn't know. How do you not have him prepared? It's like, what if he's just accepting the blow, knowing they did, to just be like, look, put it on me, not my guys.
Yeah.
That's something I would do
Yeah.
as plan B, because I would also, if we did, I don't give too much into that. It is the Super Bowl. No, it's not ideal. At the end of the day, if you got the ball first or second and they scored and you still kicked a field goal, or, whatever it is,
Right.
like the outcome is still the same. So if they took the ball first or that doesn't weigh a whole lot for me, honestly.
Yeah, and if your athletes are mentally prepared already enough, it shouldn't really matter that something gets thrown at them. That shouldn't derail their entire athletic experience because of this one thing that didn't go their way, whether or not you do practice it or not, which I'm a huge believer in practicing exactly what you're going to perform or do. However, if they're ready and you've prepared them for not just one game, but to be a team, then it shouldn't rattle them that much.
Right. And honestly, I will say, I can see how this scenario does not get practiced.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we didn't practice this at all, but what's it change?
Right. Nothing.
It's still football. You
Yep.
flip a coin. Do I want the ball first or second? Great. Well, they get to respond, and if you score a touchdown, it's automatic win. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
You still have to go out there. The ultimate goal is to punch it in the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
Period, paragraph. So, I don't know. Doesn't really excite me too much. Let them talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah, I think the internet loves to speculate, like, oh, they didn't know the rules. Okay, well, I could have Googled the rules and found it out too. So why didn't anyone in the locker room? It's not just their fault.
Here's what I will say is the 49ers are a great football team.
Yeah.
And they played very well. So did the Chiefs. It was a great game. Everybody's
Yeah.
like, oh, it was slow to start. It's like, but the strategy, like if you're truly amped about football, it was a great game. It's nothing against them. I think, entertainment will do what they can do to build a story around, oh, let's pick this out, because they didn't have much else to say.
Right. It was a good football game, not a good drama game.
Yeah. I mean, half the people want the Chiefs to win, half the people want the Niners to win.
With a little Usher intermission.
With the little, Usher concert where a football game broke out, like big deal. So, yeah, I don't think it should carry a whole lot of weight.
Yeah.
I don't either. I was just curious as to what your guys' thoughts
Our
were on
hot
that.
takes.
Hot takes.
Yeah.
That's
I bet next year all these, the two teams going to the Super Bowl probably spend, an hour or two on, just in case.
3 months on
I was
Super
gonna
Bowl
say,
overtime.
and because they do it, they're not going to need it.
Because if
That's
this
what's
is the
gonna
case, they're going to sit. I think of Hard Knocks, and could you imagine
I
Mike
love
McDaniel?
Hard Knocks.
Mike McDaniel being like, all right, we're going to talk about this because we have to. It's probably the stupidest thing we ever need to talk about, but let's talk about
I love
overtime
him.
during the Super Bowl, because if we get there, can we just all agree we need to score a freaking touchdown?
They're all like,
Good.
yep.
Do that. Thank you.
No, literally.
That's
if I
that was the best.
I was gonna
He doesn't
say-
even do it. He just has to play this.
The playbook doesn't change. You guys still line up the same way.
Yeah.
I call the plays. You execute them. We score. Game over. Everybody understand how that works? All right. Let's go practice.
Yeah, I think my perfect Super Bowl, like personality-wise, would be a Super Bowl with obviously Aaron Rodgers, and then Mike McDaniel, and then obviously Braxton, because I want to see Alex Earl.
Hey, they were still there. They were
Yes.
quite enjoying the suite they were in. They were
Yes.
living it up. It was great.
Can we
I would
transition
too.
the Dolphins into the NFC?
Sure.
Yes.
I'll
So
call.
Chiefs, Dolphins.
I vote.
Let's go.
I vote
I'll
Dolphins
call.
to the NFC.
Yeah, I'll call the man in charge.
You know Mike directly, correct?
Yeah, I have speed dial.
Yeah, exactly. Right now.
I haven't talked in a couple weeks.
It's fine. It's casual.
Didn't want to ruffle any feathers,
Yeah.
We'll get him on the Pure Athlete podcast. Let him talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
Those I enjoyed your professional opinion on all of that. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a wrap for that one.
It is. It is. All right. We're going to sign off. Stay tuned. Next week, we are dropping, well, actually, in a couple days, we're going to
Yeah.
drop another guest podcast, which will be super good, with Dr. Chelsea. A lot of good info on there. Another great resource.
Yeah.
So excited to have that drop. Looking forward to the rest of the week. Great start to the year.
Yeah.
Have a great day. See ya.